Hello students, welcome to the course Atoms and Molecules for MSc Physics Semester 2 as per the revised syllabus of Savitribai Phule Pune University CBCS 2019 pattern. The course code is PHCT 122 to be implemented from academic year 2020-21. Myself, Dr. Amol Rahane, welcomes you to today's lecture. So, we will start our first lecture from our very first module, atoms. So, in the today's lecture, we will study the revision of atomic models. So, outline of my talk is what is mean by spectrum, what is an atom, revision of atomic models. We will study the Thomson's atomic model, Rutherford's atomic model and Bohr's atomic model. We will also summarize the today's lecture at the end. So, spectroscopy is a field of experimental and theoretical research, and it has contributed much to our knowledge concerning the physical nature of things, right. It has improved our knowledge not only by our own earth, not only of our own earth, but of the sun, of interstellar space and of the distant stars. So, we can roughly say that the spectroscopy has its beginning in the year 1666 with the discovery by Sir Isaac Newton that different colored rays of light, when allowed to pass through a beam, were refracted at different angles, right. So, before Newton also people were knowing that when the light or sunlight is incident on the different crystals, the crystals they give rise to different color bands. But they were unaware that it is the property of the light and not the property of crystal. So, people were thinking that it is the property of crystal, it is showing different colors, right. So, one of the major discovery of the Newton is that the colors did not originated in the crystal, but were necessary ingredients that make up the light, right. So, the colors they were not originating inside the crystal, but they were coming out because it is the property of the ingredients that make up the light. So, in his discovery, Newton used a pencil like beam of light. So, what he did, he made a hole inside a diaphragm and sunlight allowed to pass through a diaphragm, and it when it pass on the prism, it is showing the different colors bands, right. So, in his experiment he used a beam, right, circular beam or pencil like beam. It took 100 years. So, after 100 years later, Wollaston in 1802 and Fraunhofer in 1814 discovered the dark absorption lines of the sun spectrum. What they did, they used the slit instead of a beam, right. So, Newton used a circular beam, but Fraunhofer and Wollaston what they did, they used a slit, right, and because of that they were able to discover a dark absorption lines in the sun spectrum that Newton was not able to discover. So, what Fraunhofer did, he measured the wavelengths and map out over several hundred lines of the solar spectrum and label most prominent 8 lines by the alphabets, right? So he has marked the most prominent lines, dark lines in the absorption spectrum of the sun by the alphabets A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, right? So this is a kind of spectrum that is studied by we can say Fraunhofer, right? So later many people like Kirchhoff, Rowland, Balmer, Rydberg and others contributed experimentally and theoretically to study the spectrum from different gases, or we can say the spectrum that coming from different stellar objects also, right? So Kirchhoff, we know the Kirchhoff's law not only in the circuit theorem, but also Kirchhoff has Kirchhoff's law in spectroscopy. Then we know the Rowland, who first made the diffraction grating, and he used the diffraction grating to study the spectrum of different objects, right? So Balmer, he studied experimentally the hydrogen atom spectrum in the visible region. Then Rydberg, who derived the Rydberg formula based on the solar spectrum of hydrogen and other elements. So these people, they contributed experimentally as well as theoretically to the knowledge about the spectrum, right? So the main conclusion of their study is that each gas atom or each gas has a characteristic spectrum which is the outcome of ingredients of the gas, right? So the gases, they are showing the characteristic spectrum, and that is the outcome of the ingredients of the individual gas, right? And each gas has unique composition of its ingredients, right? So these ingredients are called as atoms, so we call them atoms, right? So we can broadly classify the spectra into three categories. So one is continuous spectra, which contains all possible wavelengths. So this spectra is produced by incandescent solids, for example filaments of electric lamps, hot iron, charcoal, etc. Then comes the band spectra, which contains colors bands separated by dark spaces, which is produced in the molecular state of matter. And then comes the line spectra, which contains fine lines separated by dark spaces produced by the exciting the material in the atomic state. So we have three kinds of spectra. So continuous spectra, band spectra and line spectra, right? So we know that the condensed matter like solids or liquids at all temperatures emit electromagnetic radiation in which all wavelengths are present. In the case of atoms or molecules in a gas that only interact during the collisions, we would expect emitted radiations to be the characteristic of particular element present. And when such an atomic gas or vapor is excited by passing an electric discharge through the gas, the emitted radiations has a spectrum which contains lines or colors of only specific wavelengths. Such spectra are called as atomic spectra. The spectroscopy is therefore a useful tool for analyzing the composition of the unknown substance, right? So in the case of atoms, right? So we are concerned with the atoms. So in the case of atoms, we have line spectra, right? So line spectra can be classified into again two categories. One is the emission line spectra and another one is absorption line spectra. So when atoms are excited, they emit light of certain wavelengths which correspond to different colors. The emitted light can be observed as a series of colored lines with dark spaces in between, and this series of colored lines is called as emission line spectra, right? This spectra is produced by exciting the material in atomic state. Therefore, such spectra are also called as atomic emission spectra. Each element produces a unique set of spectral lines, since no two elements emit the same spectral line and elements can be identified by their line spectrum, right? The emission spectra are produced by the electric current through the emission spectra are produced by passing the electric current through the discharge tube containing the gas or vapor under observations. When a high enough voltage is applied across the tube, the gas atoms inside the tube will absorb enough energy to make some of their electrons come off. That is, the gas atoms are get ionized, and these electrons, they will start moving to the gas, through the gas, right? And they will create a current which raises some of the electrons in other atoms to higher energy levels, right? So these electrons, they will raise the other electrons in atoms from lower energy level to higher energy levels, and then as the electrons in the atoms, they will fall back down, they emit electromagnetic radiation as the emission line spectrum, right? So the emitted light contains only the specific frequencies which are defined by the difference in the energies of the two levels involved, and thus we can say only certain wavelengths, that is specific colors of light, are seen in such spectrum, and we can see dark spaces at other places, right? In the case of absorption spectrum, so we know the atoms, they do not only emit photons, they also absorb photons. If a photon hits an atom and the energy of the photon is the same as the difference between two energy levels in the atom, then the electron in the lower energy level can absorb the photon and jump up to the higher energy level. If the photon energy does not correspond to the difference between two energy levels, then the photon will not be absorbed in that case, right? But still it can be scattered, right? So the absorption line spectrum is obtained when light from an incandescent source made to pass through the absorbing medium in atomic state. That means if we have a continuous source that giving continuous spectrum, that source or light coming from that source is allowed to pass through the absorbing medium in the atomic state, then the characteristic dark lines appear in the absorption at the places where the color lines would have been present when the absorbent is excited in the atomic state, right? So the absorbed photons show up the black lines because the photons of these wavelengths have been absorbed and do not show up, right? And because of this, the absorption spectrum is the exact inverse of the emission spectrum. So we can see the absorption spectrum is exact inverse of the emission spectrum. So what is mean by atom? So atom, we know it is considered to be the smallest individual particle of matter. So it for a longer time, till the late 19th century, people were thinking that atom is the smallest individual particle. So most scientists at that time accepted the idea that chemical elements consist of atoms, but they knew nothing about the atoms themselves, right? So the experiments of J.J. Thomson, H.A. Wilson, Millikan and others show that the existence of negatively charged particles called as electrons within the atoms. So several people, they contributed to the let us say discovery of electron and other particles. So J. Perrin was the first who discovered that the cathode rays contains negatively charged particles called electrons, right? And then J.J. Thomson, he measured the E/M ratio of the electron. Then Millikan, we know that by his famous oil drop experiment, measured the charge of the electron. and one can easily calculate the mass of the electron from by dividing the E by m ratio by the charge of the electron, right? So we know the E by m ratio, we know the charge E, then we can easily determine the mass of the electron, right? Since atom is electrically neutral and electrons are negatively charged, equal positive and positive charge must be present within the atom, right? So the question then arose, how these negative and positive charges are arranged in the atom and what is the structure of the atom of different elements. So what is the structure of atoms of different elements, right? So we will study the revision of atomic models. So several people have contributed to the development of atomic models. So continuous efforts have been made since then to study the physical structure of an atom. To account for the spectroscopic data obtained experimentally over the years, several theories regarding atomic structure have been proposed from time to time, which are called as atomic models. So various atomic models proposed by scientists in the last century are Thomson's atomic model, Rutherford's nuclear model, Bohr's model, Sommerfeld's relativistic model, vector atom model, and wave mechanical model, right? So we will study the first three models, right? So Thomson's atomic model. So in 1898, J.J. Thomson suggested a model of the atom, right? So in his model, what is suggested is an atom has a spherical shape and the positive charges are uniformly distributed with the sphere of atomic dimensions. That is, the sphere is filled with positive charges or positive charge matter of uniform density, right? And electrons are embedded inside this positively charged matter, right? A sufficient number of electrons are supposed to be embedded within the atom to balance the positive charge so that the atom is electrically neutral. So we know the atom is electrically neutral and therefore the atom is of spherical shape and it has positively charges uniformly distributed and electrons are embedded inside this positively charged, and we can say the atom as a whole is electrically neutral, right? So Thomson was able to give details of arrangement of electrons ranging from 1 to 100 within the positive sphere, which are symmetrically placed around the center of sphere. The electrons within the positive charge resemble the plums in the pudding, and hence this model is sometimes called as plum pudding model, right? So in order to explain the observed emission of light, the electrons are allowed to oscillate or vibrate about their mean position. So earlier people have experimentally detected the spectrum that is coming from the atom, and in order to explain the observed spectra, that Thomson explained it as that the electrons, they are allowed to vibrate or oscillate about their mean positions, and since the electron is a charged particle, it should radiate energy while vibrating, right? And the frequency of emitted radiation should be equal to the frequency of vibration of the electron, that is proposed by the J.J. Thomson. And when no light is being emitted, that means the electrons are supposed to be at rest, right? So they will be at rest, then they will not emit any light. They will only emit light only when they are oscillating or vibrating. This is what the Thomson proposed in his model. So Thomson's atomic model successfully explained the existence of positively and negatively charged ions and satisfied the requirement of stability of the atom. So this is one of the strength of the Thomson's atomic model. It also provided the mechanism for the emission of electromagnetic waves. So why electromagnetic waves are emitted from the atoms? So that explanation was also given by J.J. Thomson in his model. It also provided an elastic hard model required for the kinetic theory of gases, right? So in order to explain the kinetic theory of gases, the model that was proposed by Thomson was we can say a hardcore model, right, that was able to explain the kinetic theory. However, it has certain failures. So this model did not explain the observed all the spectral lines by the atoms, right? So all the spectrum lines that coming from the atoms that are not explained by this model, right? The observed scattering of alpha particles by thin metal foils could not be explained on the basis of this model, right? So these are some of the we can say failures of this model, right? So this model was disapproved in 1909 gold foil experiment performed by Hans Geiger and Ernst Marsden. So this gold foil experiment was interpreted by Ernest Rutherford in 1911 to suggest that there is a very small nucleus of the atom that contains a very high positive charge, and his conclusions led him to propose the Rutherford model of the atom, right? So in the Rutherford's atomic model, right, so in 1909 on the suggestion of Rutherford, his colleagues Geiger and Marsden, they perform an experiment of scattering of alpha particles by thin gold foil. So an alpha particle is a doubly charged helium atom that have lost both of its electrons, right? We know that alpha particle is a doubly charged helium atom, and we can say helium ion, and it has, so the atom has lost both of its electrons, so it is obviously the ion. That is, it is a nucleus of helium atom containing 2 protons and 2 neutrons only, and the alpha particle are continuously emitted from a radioactive nucleus like radium. So what Geiger and Marsden did, they perform an experiment using a high speed beam of alpha particle. So the source of which was embedded in a lead block to absorb most of the radiations in random directions, and only a fine beam of these radiations, they are coming out from a small hole, right? So this beam was allowed to strike on a very thin gold foil of about 10⁻⁻⁶ meter thick, right? So they examined the resultant scattering of the alpha particles using a luminescent screen that glow briefly when hit by an alpha particle. When the alpha particle will hit on the screen, it will glow at that place, right? So on the basis of this experiment, the Rutherford proposed the Rutherford made 3 main observations from his experiment. So these observations are: most of the alpha particles pass straight through the gold foil, indicating that the atoms have lot of empty space, right? So most of the alpha particles, they are coming out of the gold foil undeflected, and therefore one can conclude that there is lot of empty space inside the atom. Another observation was that some of the alpha particles were scattered through small angles, but a few of them were deflected through a large angle. That is, only 1 in 10,000 alpha particles deflected with angles more than 90 degree. So this large scattering is known as anomalous scattering, right? So only one, we can say, in 10,000 alpha particles, they will deflect at more than 90 degree, right? So another observation is that occasionally only a particle scattered back along its own path, that is deflected through 180 degree and went back along the direction from which it came, right. So these are the three main observations noted by Rutherford from his experiment, right. So these observations could not be explained according to the Thomson's model of the atom. So according to the Thomson model, the electric charge inside the atom is assumed to be uniformly spread through its volume, and with only weak electric forces exerted on them by the electrons, alpha particles would go right through the foil with hardly any deflections, or they will deflect only slightly through small angles, right. But what is the observation of Rutherford? So in the Rutherford experiment, that there is scattering through a large angle, right. So since the alpha particles are relatively heavy, almost 8,000 times that of electron mass, and very high speed, that is of the order of 10⁻⁷ millimeter per second, that is used in this experiment. So it was clear that there must be something more heavier at the center of atom, where the entire positive charge and mass of the atom is concentrated, right. So there was no possibility of any scattering through large angle because of very heavier mass of the alpha particles than that of the electron mass and their speed also, but they are deflected, right, in this experiment, and therefore the Rutherford concluded that there must be something heavier, much heavier, and it is concentrated at very small space or very small region inside the atom, and it has very large mass because it has mass larger than that of the alpha particle. Because of that only alpha particles, they will be deflected back, right. So Rutherford called this central very small we can say a part as nucleus. So this part is about 10⁵ times smaller than size of the atoms, right, but heavier positively charged region as nucleus. So he called this heavier positively charged region as nucleus. On the basis of scattering of Rutherford's scattering of alpha particle by thin metal foil, Rutherford in 1911 proposed a new atom model known as nuclear atom model. According to this model, the atom consists of a central heavy part called as the nucleus of size 10⁻⁻15 meter, in which the entire positive charge and whole mass of the atom is concentrated. The nucleus is surrounded by a cloud of electrons whose total charge is equal to the positive charge of the nucleus, so that the atom is electrically neutral. The atom as a whole is electrically neutral, and we can say the positive charge is concentrated in a very small region, we call it nucleus, and electrons are distributed around the this positive charge, right. So since the size of the atom is about 10⁻⁻10 meter, the most of the volume of the atom is unoccupied. So we can see size of the atom is 10⁻⁻10 meter and size of the nucleus 10⁻⁻15 meter. So 10⁵ is the difference, right. So almost 10⁵ meter difference we can say in between these two values. So 10⁵ difference in between these two values. So it is, if nucleus is of size 1 meter, then the we can say atom is of size 10,000 meter, like if we made the analogy, right. So in order to explain the stability of the atom, Rutherford considered that these electrons are revolving around the nucleus in circular orbits, right, like planets around the sun. So how the atom is stable? That stability he explained that the electrons are revolving around the nucleus just like planets, they revolve around the sun, and the stability will now be attained as the electrostatic force of attraction between the positively charged nucleus and negatively charged electron, right, and that which provided the necessary centripetal force for circular motion, right? So this necessary, we can say the electron are revolving in circular orbit. The necessary centripetal force is provided by the electrostatic force of attraction between the positively charged electron, positively charged nucleus and negatively charged electron. This is what proposed by Rutherford in his model. So there are certain drawbacks of this model. So according to the electromagnetic theory, a revolving electron should continuously radiate energy. If it is so, the energy of the electron will go on decreasing, resulting in continuous decreasing in its radius. As a result, the electron will follow the spiral path and approach the nucleus slowly, giving out radiations of constantly increasing frequency and finally fall into the nucleus. This will make the atom unstable. Further, according to this model, electron can rotate in any orbit of any radius and hence they must emit radiations of all frequency. That means they will emit continuous spectrum, right? So this is not in agreement with experimental observations because atoms like hydrogen emit line spectrum of fixed frequencies only and not all the frequency. That means the atoms, they are emitting the line spectrum and not the continuous spectrum. Again, the Rutherford could not explain the distribution of electrons around the nucleus. So how the electrons are distributed around the nucleus, so that is not explained by Rutherford in his model. So the difficulties were resolved by Bohr, who applied quantum theory to Rutherford atomic model. So both the Thomson and Rutherford, they were doing experiments with the atoms, right? So they did experiments. On the basis of their experiments, they made the this Rutherford atomic model and Thomson atomic model, right? But it was Bohr who was a theoretician. He visited both the laboratories of Thomson and Rutherford and he understood their experiment, and on the basis of their experiment he applied the Planck's atomic theory, right? At the time in 1900, Max Planck proposed a revolutionary theory called as Planck's quantum theory, and we know that in 1905 Einstein used this theory to explain the photoelectric effect, right? So it was around 1913 Niels Bohr, a great Danish physicist, who combined this quantum theory or quantum ideas of Planck and Einstein with that of Rutherford model of the atom. So he took the Rutherford model of the atom and he applied the quantum theory to this model, right? Till that the people, they were using the classical theory to the atomic model. So the Bohr in his model, he proposed he accepted the Rutherford's concept of the nuclear atom model, in which the atom consists of a positively charged nucleus. That idea of Rutherford is accepted by Bohr in his model. So he postulated that the electrons move around the nucleus in a few widely separated permissible orbits, and the orbit of the electron is fixed and it does not radiate energy while moving in its fixed orbit. So he called it this orbit as stationary orbit. Thus in Bohr's model, electrons can move only in some particular orbits of definite radii only, and not all radii are suggested by Rutherford, right? Again, when an electron jumps from higher stationary orbit to a lower stationary orbit, it radiates energy of definite frequency. So these are some of the main highlights of the Bohr's atomic model, right? So in summary, what we have learned is what is an atom and atomic spectra. So we have also revised the different atomic models like Thomson atomic model, Rutherford's atomic model and Bohr's atomic model. In the next lecture, we will study the Bohr's theory of hydrogen atom, and also we will study the hydrogen atom spectrum in detail. Thank you.